Hello, everyone. Today we are diving into something that might just shift the way you think about English forever. Picture this. You're sitting in your favorite chair, maybe the kettle is humming nearby, maybe the air smells like fresh paper or last night's coffee. Your phone is on the table, your headphones are in, and the English Leap podcast just started playing. You're not sitting in a classroom. There's no teacher breathing over your shoulder, no tests, no textbooks, no one asking you to repeat "where is the bathroom" for the 100th time. You're just here, listening. And yet, somehow, you're learning faster than ever before. You might be good at English if you listen to this video. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world we're learning together. Now, let's focus. Let's start our next journey together. You didn't get here by accident. Somewhere deep inside you, you've been wanting this. Not just, I want to speak English, but I want to feel different when I speak. You want to think in English, dream in English, argue in English, maybe flirt in English. Hey, no judgment. You want English to stop being the scary wall in front of your goals and start being the tool you use to break down those walls. And here you are, pressing play on the podcast that's going to help you leap. The truth is, your brain already knows how to learn language. You just forgot how good you used to be at it. When you were a baby, you didn't take grammar lessons, you didn't read vocabulary lists, you listened, you watched, you repeated. You messed up 100 times, and still, one day, you just spoke. That's the secret this podcast is built on. Not stress, not perfection, just small, real steps taken every day with curiosity, not fear. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Your journey will not look like a straight line. Sometimes it'll feel like you're walking in circles. But each time you loop around, you'll notice something new. An expression you suddenly understand, a joke you finally get, a sentence you can say out loud without tripping over your tongue. You might not feel fluent yet, but something in you is shifting. Today, we're planting the seed for a new habit. You're telling your brain, this matters. This is part of who I am now. This is worth showing up for. Now, let's take a moment to talk about a word. One word, one little English word that you'll hear all the time on this podcast. Yet. I don't understand it yet. I can't say that fluently yet. I'm not confident yet. That word gives you permission to be learning, not failing, just learning. It turns I'm not good at English into I'm getting better at English. That word is going to be one of your best friends here. And if you ever feel like you're not moving fast enough, remember, speed is not the goal, consistency is. Listening every day, even just for 10 minutes, is what creates fluency. Your brain builds language in the background, like updates running quietly while your phone charges overnight. You don't need to study English the way you think you do. You need to live it. You need to soak in it. And the easiest way to do that? Stories, conversations, voices that carry meaning, emotion, rhythm. That's what this podcast gives you. Think of it this way. If English were a city, grammar would be the streets, vocabulary the buildings, but listening is the map. You need the map before you start driving. And today, you just unfolded that map. Now imagine this. You walk into a cafe in a city where English is the only language spoken. You hear conversations floating around. She totally ghosted him. I'm crashing at Sarah's tonight. That movie was such a tearjerker. If you've been listening to the podcast, these phrases don't scare you. You've heard them before. Maybe you don't know every word, but you feel what they mean. That's the magic. That's the result of this journey you've just begun. Let's do a quick check-in. What was the last sentence you heard in English and understood without translating? What's one English phrase you use almost without thinking now? What's a word you learned this week and actually used? Pause and answer them, even in your head. Those are your mini milestones. Celebrate them. Because in this space, we don't measure progress by tests. We measure it by moments. And the moment is now. You pressed play. You started. That's not a small thing. Remember this feeling. You'll look back on it one day and think, that's when everything started to change. You wake up again, and this time something feels different. Maybe it's the quiet confidence that's settled in overnight, or maybe it's just the way the morning sunlight hits your phone screen as the English Leap podcast starts playing again. Either way, you're showing up, and that already separates you from the thousands of people who say, I'll start tomorrow. You're listening, not just passively, like background music, but with purpose. And that small daily habit is doing something extraordinary inside your brain. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Your brain loves patterns. It eats repetition for breakfast. And when you listen to English daily, you start to feed it those patterns again and again until suddenly they click. At first, it feels like chaos. Words blend into each other. You catch one word out of every 5. But slowly, like a blurry photo coming into focus, you begin to understand full ideas. Your ears adjust, your mind speeds up. You stop translating, you just know. It's not magic, it's science. Your brain is building a new neural highway, one that connects meaning to sound, grammar to feeling, and words to real-life context. But that road only gets smoother the more you travel it. So you press play again. Now picture this. You're brushing your teeth, headphones in, the podcast is playing, and a story unfolds about a traveler lost in London. You hear, he got totally turned around and ended up at the wrong tube station. But instead of panicking, he asked a stranger, smiled, and turned it into a mini adventure. You're brushing, nodding, maybe even smiling. And without realizing it, you've just absorbed 3 useful expressions. Turned around, got lost, ended up, arrived somewhere by accident, turned it into a mini adventure. That's real English, not textbook English, not the pen is on the table English. This is the language of life, of real people, and you just understood it while cleaning your teeth. You start to crave this feeling, that invisible growth, the spark when something confusing suddenly makes sense. One day, you're walking and listening to an episode about daily routines. The speaker says, I usually hit snooze once or twice before I drag myself to the kitchen. And it hits you. You do that too. You connect. You don't just understand the words, you feel them. That's the power of daily listening. Let's zoom in on a word you'll hear often on this podcast, usually. It's one of those deceptively simple words that unlocks smoother English. When you say, I usually drink coffee, you're not just listing facts, you're painting habits, rhythm, a sense of self. It's the kind of word that gives your English flow. You don't need to say, in general, I prefer to have coffee most mornings. That's robotic. You say, I usually have coffee, and boom, it's natural. You'll hear usually, sometimes, rarely, and never, all throughout the episodes. These adverbs don't just tell time, they build your personality in English. So now, when you listen each day, don't chase full understanding. Listen for feelings. Listen for patterns. Listen for how people say things, not just what they say. The podcast becomes your training ground, but it's not like a gym with heavy weights and sweat. It's more like dancing every day until your muscles just know what to do. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That your ears are more powerful than you think. You don't need to see every word written down. You don't need subtitles forever. You need exposure, repetition, real rhythm. That's what English Leap Podcast gives you. Every story, every sentence, every joke. It's designed to train your ears. And once your ears are trained, your speaking follows like a loyal friend. You also start to notice how English sounds. The rise and fall, the pause before a punchline, the music of it. And that's when the real shift happens. You're no longer translating in your head. You're no longer asking, what does that word mean? You're hearing ideas, not words. That's the leap.
Let's not forget, this isn't just about fluency, it's about confidence. You don't want to just speak English, you want to feel like yourself when you do. You want to joke, to explain, to say, I disagree, or that reminds me of something. And it all starts by listening. So you make it a ritual. Morning coffee and podcast, nighttime walk and podcast, 5 minutes while waiting for your friend to show up, and boom, you're learning. Not because you have to, but now you want to. Daily listening changes your identity. You're not learning.
You're sitting across from a native English speaker. Maybe it's a friend of a friend, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's just a tourist asking for directions. And the moment comes, you have to speak. Your mind spins. You know the words. You've heard them on the podcast. You've practiced saying them. But now, in this moment, your mouth won't move. It's like someone hit pause on your brain. Your heart thumps, your tongue feels like it's made of cement, and all the good English you've been learning? Gone, evaporated, vanished into thin air. Sound familiar? How you learn English easily? Memorize. This, for beginners, speaking fear isn't because you don't know English. It's because you don't trust that you know it. And trust only grows when you give yourself permission to be human. Mistakes, awkward pauses, weird word choices, and all. The English Leap podcast knows this. That's why every episode doesn't just teach language, it helps train your voice, your courage, your ability to speak even when you're nervous, even when your grammar isn't perfect, even when you're sweating. So let's talk about how to stop freezing up. First, stop trying to sound smart. Seriously, that's the trap. You think, I need to say this perfectly, and suddenly you can't say anything. But what if you changed your goal? Not, I need to impress them, but I need to connect with them. You're not taking a test, you're having a conversation. That's why this podcast teaches you to speak like you're telling a story, not reciting a script. For example, say someone asks you what you did yesterday. Don't say, yesterday I performed activities involving physical exertion. Say, I went for a long walk and got caught in the rain. Total movie scene. You're not memorizing, you're sharing. Let's pause on a word you'll love. Awkward. Oh yes, one of the most useful words you'll ever learn. It means uncomfortable, clumsy, or strange. And it's totally okay to feel awkward when you speak English. In fact, that's kind of the point. Use it. Say, sorry, that sounded awkward. My English is a bit awkward right now. I'm awkward, but I'm trying. When you name it, you shrink its power. And when you can laugh at your awkward moments, you become unstoppable. Let me show you something magical that happens when you listen to the podcast often. Your mouth starts to remember what your brain forgets. You hear a phrase on repeat, like, that makes sense, or I totally agree. And one day, you say it out loud, without thinking. It just pops out. That's fluency. Not speaking perfectly, speaking naturally. It happens when you stop thinking word by word and start speaking idea by idea. Here's a real moment from an episode. You ever just stand in the shower and rehearse your whole argument with someone who's not even there? You chuckled, you related, and maybe the next time you're talking about overthinking, that exact sentence bubbles up. You're not translating anymore. You're speaking from feeling. Let's go deeper. Why do you freeze when speaking English, but not in your native language? Because in your native tongue, you trust that the words will come. In English, you panic, you reach for perfection, and the moment you do, your brain tenses up. So here's your new rule. Fluency doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from fearing less. That means making space to mess up, to say things the wrong way, to mix past tense with present tense and still get your point across. Because guess what? Most native speakers don't care. They're not grading you. They're trying to understand you. You're allowed to pause, to breathe, to say, wait, how do you say that again? I'm still learning. Let me try that one more time. You're not a robot. You're a real person learning a real language. And the podcast gives you space to practice like a person, not a machine.
Remember what I learned in English from this video? That being awkward is not the opposite of fluency, it's the path to fluency. Let's build a small exercise together. After each episode, pick one sentence you liked. Speak it aloud 5 times. Then change one word and say it again. Then replace it with your own experience. For example, podcast says, "I completely forgot my umbrella." You say, "I completely forgot my homework." Then, "I totally forgot my wallet." Then, "I actually forgot my own birthday last year." Yes, that happens. This is called sentence substitution, and it's a beginner-friendly hack to grow your speaking confidence without scripts. Now, you're not just listening, you're rehearsing real life. Soon, that frozen feeling you once had when someone said, "Hey, do you speak English?" will be gone. Not because you learned 10,000 new words, but because you've practiced speaking as yourself. That's the power of narrative. That's the leap. Let's recap. One word to lock in today.
You're sitting at a bus stop and you hear someone next to you say, "Literally everyone was there. It was a total disaster." You blink. Wait a minute. That sentence? Did it really mean what it sounded like? Welcome to the wonderful, confusing, and often hilarious world of modern English words that don't behave. And today, we meet one of the most powerful, literally. Now, before we dive in, how you learn English easily, memorize this for beginners. Not every word in English is used logically. Some are emotional, exaggerated, even contradictory, and that's what makes them powerful in conversation. Take literally. Technically, it means exactly, word for word. But in real life, people often use it to mean very or emotionally intense, even when it's not literal. I was literally dying of laughter. She literally exploded when she saw the mess. This podcast literally saved my English. Of course, no one actually died, exploded, or held life in their earbuds, but the feeling was strong, and that's why the word sticks. You've now stepped into what I like to call the secret club of native expressions, and literally is your membership badge. The English Leap podcast is full of these little gems, words that carry weight, not because of grammar rules, but because of how they're used. You're starting to recognize them. You don't need to open a dictionary every time. You feel their vibe, their rhythm, their color, their role in the sentence. And now you begin to unlock meaning through intuition. That's a big leap. Let's paint a picture. You're in a conversation. Someone says, "I literally ran into my ex at the grocery store." You might pause. Wait, like, actually ran into them? But no, what they mean is they bumped into them by surprise. See, one word can change the whole sentence's energy. When you understand words like literally, you understand how English people play with language. And guess what? Now you can play too. Try it. Say, "I literally screamed when I passed the test." "This food is literally heaven." "He literally called me 10 times today." You're not lying, you're emphasizing. Let's go a little deeper now. Why does this matter? Because when you listen to English through podcasts, conversations, movies, you don't just need vocabulary. You need feelings, tone, the unwritten meaning. And this is where most learners get stuck. They know the word run. They even know run into. But they freeze when they hear, "I ran into a problem." Why? Because they've never heard it in real life. That's what makes English Leap Podcast different. You're not learning words in isolation. You're learning them in action, in context, in conversation, in motion. That's how you remember. It's how you learn without cramming. And it's how a simple sentence like, "I was literally about to call you," becomes second nature. Let's rewind to your brain again. You've got this incredible machine between your ears that lives for pattern recognition. It loves to hear the same phrase in different situations. Once, twice, 5 times, then boom, it becomes yours. Let me give you a tool we use a lot on the show: echo plus twist. Podcast says, "I literally couldn't believe my eyes." You echo, "I literally couldn't believe my ears." You twist,
I seriously couldn't believe my luck. This technique helps you build fluency fast, especially for words that have emotional power. Let's tie it to another core principle. Emotional vocabulary sticks longer. Words like literally, totally, seriously, absolutely, actually. These aren't just adverbs, they're intensity boosters. They make your English sound more real, more you. So, how do you practice this? Simple. After each episode, write down one sentence that made you laugh, nod, or say aha. Then, repeat it out loud. Replace one word. Say it again, but with a different emotion: happy, angry, surprised. This turns passive listening into active fluency building. And the bonus? It's fun. You start noticing these words everywhere, in movies, on Instagram, even in songs. Oh my God, I'm literally shaking right now. She's absolutely crushing it at work. This is actually insane. You laugh because you get it, and you remember the first time these phrases felt confusing. Now, they're part of your toolkit. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That literally may not always mean literal, but understanding how people use it is the real win. Let's recap. One word to lock in today: literally. One learning principle: emotional words are sticky and powerful. One beginner tip: use the echo plus twist technique to.
You're standing in front of a mirror, practicing what you'll say at your next meeting. Or maybe to that barista who always says, "What can I get started for you?" faster than your brain can keep up. And this time, something new happens. Your sentence flows. Sure, it's not perfect. Maybe there's a pause, a tiny correction, but the words come out, and you realize you didn't think about grammar. You just used it. That's the dream, right? You didn't conjugate verbs in your head like a computer. You didn't run a mental spell check. You just spoke. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Grammar is a tool, not a test. It's the scaffolding of a story, not the story itself. And on the English Leap podcast, you don't study grammar, you experience it. Let me explain. Most learners fear grammar like it's a math test. Too many rules, too many exceptions, too much red pen. But what if grammar wasn't something to be memorized? What if it was something to be felt? Let's say you hear this sentence in an episode. She's been working late all week, and now she's completely exhausted. Without even realizing it, you've just heard present perfect continuous, has been working, a cause-effect structure, and now she's, an intensifier, completely exhausted. Did you stop to analyze it? No. Did it sound natural? Yes. Did your brain store it for later? Absolutely. That's the beauty of grammar in real life. It's invisible scaffolding. It holds up your meaning without making itself the star of the show. Let's focus on a word today that proves this point: been. It's tiny, easy to miss, but it shows up everywhere. I've been thinking. She's been gone for hours. You've been quiet lately. Been is your shortcut to show time, change, and emotional tone, all in one syllable. You hear it so often in the podcast, you stop noticing it until you need it, and then it just appears. That's the power of immersive grammar. It's not about drills, it's about exposure. Now picture this. You're listening to a story in the podcast, something funny, like a mix-up at the airport. The narrator says, "I had been waiting for over an hour when I realized I was at the wrong gate." And suddenly, you understand past perfect continuous, not because you studied the rule, but because you felt the frustration. You followed the timeline. This is how babies learn grammar. This is how you're learning it again. Now let's talk about sentence rhythm. English has a beat, a pulse. Some words are stressed, some are soft, and grammar lives inside that rhythm. Try saying, "She's been waiting. He'd been thinking. We've been trying to call you." Feel that bounce, that flow? When you repeat sentences from the podcast aloud, you're not just training vocabulary, you're training muscle memory. Your mouth starts to follow the music of grammar.
That's why we use so many mini dialogues in the episodes. You don't just learn past tense. You hear someone say, "I thought you said Friday." "No, I meant Saturday." Suddenly, you're not learning conjugation. You're learning correction, clarification, real life. Let's take a beginner-friendly phrase from today's episode and work it out. Podcast says, "I've been meaning to tell you something." You echo, "I've been meaning to learn English for years." You twist, "She's been meaning to call her parents." You own it, "I've been meaning to finish this episode, but it's too good." See how flexible that is? That's grammar in motion, and once you feel it, you don't forget it. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That grammar is not a set of prison rules, it's a recipe. And once you know the taste, you can cook without measuring every spoon. Let's switch gears for a second. What happens when you make a grammar mistake? Maybe you say, "I go to the store yesterday," and someone corrects you, "You went to the store." Ouch. Embarrassing? Sure, but only if you expect perfection. On this podcast, we expect progress, not perfection. And mistakes? They're data. They're proof you're using your English in the wild. So here's your new habit. When you make a grammar mistake, repeat the corrected version 3 times out loud. That's it. "I go to the store yesterday" to "I went to the store yesterday." "I went to the store yesterday." "I went to the store yesterday." No shame, just practice. And trust me, it sticks. Let's recap. 1 word to lock in today, Ben. 1 learning principle, grammar should be felt, not feared. 1 beginner tip, repeat real podcast phrases out loud to train sentence rhythm. You're not a grammar student anymore. You're a storyteller. And every mistake, every repetition, every tiny word like Ben, it's
You lean back, close your eyes, and press play. This time, it's not a lesson, it's a story. A man loses his suitcase in a foreign airport. A child blurts out an awkward secret at dinner. A tourist accidentally orders fried pencil instead of fried fish. And you're laughing, you're listening, but something else is happening too. You're learning. How you learn English easily? Memorize this for beginners. Stories are the fastest way to absorb language naturally without realizing you're doing it. That's why the English Leap podcast is packed with real-life moments, not just lists or lessons, but messy, hilarious, emotional, human stories. And your brain? It loves this. Here's why. Every story gives you structure. It gives you a beginning, a middle, and an end. It gives you repetition without boredom, and most importantly, it gives you context. Let's pause here and focus on 1 magical word, actually. Oh yes, actually is the little key that unlocks contrast, surprise, honesty, and correction in a sentence. I actually liked the movie, even though the reviews were bad. She said it was easy, but it's actually kind of hard. I thought you were serious, but you were actually joking. It's short, it's simple, and it softens or sharpens whatever comes after. You hear it constantly in the podcast, tucked inside stories. And before you know it, you're saying it too. I actually started learning English 3 years ago. It's actually not that complicated. I actually listen to this podcast every morning. Suddenly, you're not memorizing words, you're communicating feeling. Let's break down what happens inside your brain when you listen to a story in English. You connect to emotion. You follow the flow of cause and effect. You predict what might happen next. You hear grammar, rhythm, and expressions in context. You remember it all because it's wrapped in emotion. Now, compare that to a list of verbs. Which one do you think sticks longer? Exactly. Here's an example. In one episode, a woman tries to order coffee but forgets the word iced. So she says, "Can I have a cold coffee? Like, not hot?" The barista smiles. "You mean iced coffee?" And she laughs. "Yes, that's it, iced." It's a simple moment, but you learn
real interaction, word substitution, natural correction, humor, and you'll never forget how to order an iced coffee again. That's the power of story. Now let's add a technique you can use after every podcast episode. Retell, remix. Step 1. Retell what happened in the story in your words. Step 2. Remix the story with your own details. Podcast story, someone misses their train. You retell, he missed the train because he overslept. You remix, I missed a flight once because I was stuck in traffic. This exercise trains your grammar, vocabulary, and storytelling all at once, and you don't need a partner to practice. You just need your voice. Even better, you start building your English identity. Because stories aren't just lessons, they're mirrors. You hear someone in the podcast make a mistake, and you think, that's totally me. You hear someone succeed, and you think, I could do that too. And the moment you see yourself in the story, you remember the language forever. Let's revisit our star word, actually. Practice it today in a few ways. Correction. I thought it was Tuesday, but it's actually Wednesday. Surprise. He actually cooked dinner for once. Clarification. I'm not angry. Actually, I'm just tired. Feel how it slides into the sentence? It gives nuance. It makes your English more real. And when you hear these tiny gems over and over in podcast stories, they move from your ears to your tongue effortlessly. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That grammar rules tell you how to speak, but stories show you why. And when you know why, you remember how. One more thing. When you listen to stories, you're also training your listening endurance. Instead of zoning out after 30 seconds, your attention stays strong. Your mind wants to know what happens next. This is especially helpful for beginners who struggle with long audio. The tip? Don't aim to understand every word. Aim to follow the emotion. When someone sounds worried, excited, annoyed, lean into that feeling, and slowly you'll start to decode everything else. Let's recap. One word to lock in today, actually. One learning principle.
It's late. The street outside is quiet. Your phone glows as you scroll through messages and memes, but something tells you to plug in your headphones one more time, one last episode before bed. You hit play, and just like that, the English Leap podcast becomes part of your day again. And this time, it's not just habit, it's ritual. How you learn English easily, memorize this for beginners, when you make English a small, daily part of your routine, just like brushing your teeth or checking the weather, it becomes effortless, natural, almost automatic. That's the secret nobody tells you. Consistency beats intensity. You don't need 3-hour study sessions filled with textbooks and stress. You need 10 minutes of joyful English every day. That's what we build together here, a daily English ritual. You wake up, stretch, put on the podcast. You listen while cooking breakfast. You laugh at a story while washing dishes. You whisper sentences to yourself while walking the dog. No pressure, no tests, no finish this page anxiety. Just English, in your ears, in your rhythm. Let's talk about a word that fits this mood perfectly, routine. Not the kind that's boring, the kind that's empowering. This is part of my routine now. My morning routine includes English listening. It's weird if I skip my routine. I miss it. That's what we're creating here, a language habit so strong you feel off balance without it. Not because you're forced, but because you like how it makes you feel. Here's what's wild. Your brain rewards you for repetition. Every time you complete a daily task, your brain gives you a hit of dopamine, your internal yes chemical. Even a 5-minute podcast episode counts, especially when it feels like progress. You don't realize it right away, but day by day, word by word, episode by episode, you start building something big. Your confidence grows, your vocabulary sharpens, your listening skills expand, and all you did was show up each day. Let me share a trick from this podcast's secret sauce, anchor phrases. We use them all the time.
They're short, useful sentences that appear often, like, "You know what I mean?" "Here's the thing," "Let's be real," "Guess what happened next?" These phrases give your speech a natural, conversational flow. When you start using them, people won't just think you speak English, they'll think you speak it well. So here's a challenge. Every morning, pick one anchor phrase from the episode. Repeat it 3 times. Then find a way to use it in your day. It could be texting a friend in English, saying it aloud to your cat, or even slipping it into a conversation with a coworker. Example, anchor, guess what happened next? Use it to start a story. So I was walking to the store, guess what happened next? Now you're not just listening, you're living in English. Remember what I learned in English from this video? That rituals beat motivation. Motivation comes and goes, rituals stay, and English is becoming your daily ritual. You've likely noticed that your brain is doing less work to switch into English mode. That's because the repetition is training your mind to default to English in small moments. That's the beginning of fluency, not just the ability to speak, but the instinct to think in English. One more tip for today, pair your English ritual with another habit. This is called habit stacking. You take something you already do and stick your English practice onto it. Examples, while brushing teeth, shadow podcast phrases out loud. While walking, listen to one short episode. While journaling, write one sentence about what you learned today. This way, English becomes part of you, not just something you do, but something you are becoming. Let's bring back today's special word, routine. Use it in real sentences today. I've added English podcasts to my morning routine. It's just part of my routine now. My routine keeps me improving. When your routine includes English, you stop worrying about how long it will take to get fluent, because you are fluent, in motion, in progress, every day. Let's recap. 1 word to lock in today, routine. 1 learning principle, small daily rituals create long-term language growth. 1 beginner tip, use habit stacking to make English automatic. You've just built a habit. You've created a path. And the best part? You didn't even need to leave your room. So as the podcast episode ends and your day winds down, ask yourself, what tiny English habit can I repeat tomorrow? Because fluency isn't a finish line, it's a rhythm. And you're dancing beautifully.